Welcome to Husband Talking. Explore riveting tales of infidelity with us. Please subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin.
I once read that when people search for a partner, they naturally judge each other based on a few key things like looks, age, money, and education. Other things matter too, like whether they have kids from a past relationship, how generous they are, or if they're funny or smart. Even stuff like whether they drink or follow a certain diet can make a difference. One general assumption is that a guy making $75,000 a year might be okay as a friend with benefits for a woman making $18,000 but isn't husband material. Despite what you see in Hollywood movies, the wealthy don't marry the hired help, they marry within their own social class. We all know roughly our level of desirability. A man probably won't expect a woman he sees as far above his level to do more than hook up with him. We subconsciously think that somewhere along the path of courtship and marriage, they will decide it was a mistake and that they can do better. Whether this is true or not, it got me thinking that my wife and I are well matched. We married in our 30s, a bit later than our folks did, and now, after 6 years, we are starting to talk about having a family. Maybe this spring. We're both decent-looking, clever people from New England working-class families. My family made more money than hers. My dad is a successful contractor from Fairfield, but my wife's family had more status. She was an oops baby, born to a mother at the end of her childbearing years, married to an older man. Her dad was president of a small bank in Concord, Maine. Those were the days when bankers made a decent living but didn't earn a lot of money. Her dad wore a suit every day, and everyone in town knew they might need to go to him for a loan. He controlled money and people's access to it, and because of that, he had status. As adults, we each graduated from college, her from a prestigious private college with no scholarship aid. Her mother worked for years to pay the tuition. I graduated from the local state college, which I paid for with a little help from my dad. Laura majored in art history with a minor in political science, an interesting field, but tough to earn enough money to raise a family on. On the other hand, I had the brains to get into a private school, and Dad had the money and urged me to do so. Observing my family, I realized that success in life at our level was more about initiative and brains than education. I learned the basics of running a business and how to think, speak, and write in more or less that order. The local state college suited me fine, especially as I could attend courses at Amherst and Mount Holyoke colleges more or less at will. I majored in history with a minor in business and took overloads every semester. After 2 years, I switched to engineering. I loved learning, reveling in poetry, literature, and history for my soul, while balancing them with economics and engineering courses for the practical part of my mind. I ignored students focused on the party life and made several fast friends among the serious students. During school, I worked for my dad during summers and learned the hard work and sweat side of the contracting business. After graduation, I learned the business side. I discovered that while I was good at management, I didn't enjoy it. I liked old historic buildings, the craftsmen on site, the thrill of discovery as you removed layers of renovation, and the sense of accomplishment when restoring them to their former glory. You honor architects and craftsmen, dead 50 years or more, by giving new life to their work. I also liked having an active hand in the work. I met an old man who specialized in decorative plaster work and was seduced by the craft and his way of working. I spent 3 years as his apprentice and then developed a nice business as a small firm specializing in restoration plaster. This included everything from the structural support of plaster work to decorative painting, gilding, and other ornamental work. I knew I wouldn't get rich, but it would provide a good living. At 36 years of age, I carry on my payroll my former master Samuel, his apprentice, a secretary and office manager, and 1 laborer. I hire subcontractors and a host of the best restoration artists and professionals in the business as needed. As a side note, I am nearly finished writing a book on restoring decorative plaster work with Samuel as my co-author. Oddly enough, while Laura went to school 7 miles away from my school with 3 years of overlap, I never met her during those years. 5 years after I graduated, I met her in a bar when we were both back visiting our respective folks. Her father had died, and her mom moved to South Fairfield. Laura had been married and divorced in the interim. She refused to say much about it other than her husband became abusive, which is all one has to say. In getting to know her, we talked about our common experience in and around East Hampton. She was a bit of a party girl in college, no thought to earning a living, no overloads, and no challenging classes. Having said this, you would make a mistake to assume she had a second-class mind. She was smart but lazy, never learning the pleasure of working on a difficult intellectual puzzle. I now realize this was the curriculum of choice for many who imagine themselves in the upper class. Not much work, lots of fun, and a prestigious diploma. The real world comes as a surprise to people like that. She was surprised and a bit jealous to find I had taken courses from some of the same professors she did, although she tended to take introductory courses while I talked my way into more focused upper-level ones. It also irked her that I spent considerable time at these professors' homes, eating at their tables, meeting their spouses, and discussing art, science, and life well into the night. Some of them regularly assist me now when I run into issues of conservation and don't know exactly what I am seeing emerge from under the paint I have to remove or what I have in front of me. The economic, upbringing, educational, and regional connections created a bond, but I thought it was our intellect that deepened our relationship into love and finally marriage. The decision about where we would live was easy. I mentioned at work that Laura was living in Baltimore, and Samuel announced that as he had family in Baltimore, we all might as well move there. It was closer to bigger jobs and property costs weren't as high, so we did. When I bought our house, the neighborhood was somewhat undesirable. Ours is a lovely Victorian Romanesque-style house faced with cut serpentine stone, a soft stone found locally with a greenish cast. The inside was complete with all of the original stained glass windows and custom woodwork. I replastered half of the house, copying the original moldings and plasterwork decoration. You may have seen it as it's been written up in several magazines lately. The neighborhood's gentrification has been accelerating, which is good for our investment. The house is worth 3 or 4 times what we have in it now. However, we are surrounded by folks who earn or at least make a lot more money than us. Most of my work is for the wealthy, institutions, or the government, so my wife and I have to be socially active. She's got a part-time job with the local city council, and our social life has changed from a dinner and movie to a dinner and a play or the symphony. I've had to buy a black suit and a couple of 100 ties. Now I cannot reliably pronounce the names of French Impressionist painters with the proper accent. But one of the growing differences between us is that wifey can and looks down on those who cannot. I am always clean and well-dressed but prefer an understated look. Actually, I admire the way the relatively few wealthy ones who come from old money dress superb quality but never the brand names added onto cheaply made clothing from China, no logos showing. My casual clothes are worn but not worn out. Our neighbors are similar to most people who are doing well for themselves, in my opinion. They are overgroomed, diet to the point of becoming scrawny, and show their class insecurity by wearing outrageously expensive designer clothing with the labels on the outside so they can impress their peers. Linda, our neighbor's wife, is very proud of a hugely expensive watch that looks like a Chihuahua's Collarno taste. Despite my enjoyment of physical work, my business has shifted from me doing it myself to me undertaking the business end of restoration. I still work with my hands and body as much as possible. I figured out that if my back goes out, I can't work, so I work out 3 times a week to ensure that I stay flexible and my muscle tone is good enough to keep me from getting hurt. However, I also like to eat, and while weightlifting maintains muscle mass, it doesn't do much about calories. My weight has been edging up a bit, and my business down a bit, thanks to the recession. Last October, I noticed that shirts marked large didn't fit so well when I sat down. While not obese, I do have a belly that I have to admit is larger than is convenient. By contrast, wifey has, as they used to say, kept her shape. It also occurred to me that my very desirable wife is surrounded by high-earning, good-looking, trim males, and I don't look too good by comparison. Further, I rationalized that you do have to call a stop to waistline creep somewhere, or you risk becoming a circus attraction. So when my daughter dumped her 130-pound 2-year-old mutt named Prince on us, Prince for short, I used him to make a change in my life. Since I work out of our home much of the time, I got the job of primary caregiver to the dog, taking him for walks while my Laura does the brushing and the occasional bath. After a bit, she decided to rename the dog, and wifey settled on Buddy. I wondered if she might have been thinking of Cerberus, the big 3-headed dog guarding the gates of Hades. She sometimes uses one word when she means another, but the words were a bit too different for that. Or maybe she liked the nickname Buddy and didn't realize it was short for Spartan. I didn't much care for the name, but what the hell? Buddy it was, except when I had to holler it on the street. Then I shortened it to Spark. The dog doesn't seem to mind being called different names. One of the jobs of dog ownership is walking the dog, which should certainly be more than short defecatory rambles. Buddy is a remarkably good-looking fellow. People stop us to admire him. Well, formerly a he, there are a few essential bits missing now. Buddy isn't satisfied with a quick stroll around the block unless the weather is rotten. He likes to get a good long walk. I started walking the dog several miles a day and discovered I really like to walk. In no time, I had lined up my day's phone calls and we did a walk and call. We would spend an hour walking 3 miles every morning while I got my calls in. From there, it was a short hop to jogging half a mile, walking half a mile, jogging half a mile, so we were covering 4 miles in an hour. I pushed it to 5 miles an hour, but the dog was struggling, so we settled on 4 miles an hour. At the same time, I shifted my diet as well, reducing the helpings of meat and eating more vegetables and salad. No prepared salad dressing, home dressings made with balsamic vinegar, a bit of olive oil and cheese. I used to joke that you couldn't neglect a belly like mine. You had to feed it 3 times a day, or it would shrivel up to nothing. Although it began to shrivel, I really didn't feel I was culinarily deprived just eating right. I had dropped from 235 to 210 pounds before wifey remarked, "Have you lost weight or something? Those pants are a bit too big." Nah, I probably was never as fat as you remember me to be. Seriously, these pants were always a little big. We support 2 of the local charity resale shops, and since I wear kind of generic men's clothes, it was easy to donate my big chinos and jeans and buy smaller ones that fit. All of the clothes are slightly worn and all look pretty much the same as the clothes I've always worn. Wifey has a few quirks. One that she inherited from her mother, who was an out-and-out hippie flower child who married a banker. Go figure. Neither woman liked perfume or scented deodorants and didn't use anything but clear nail polish. Her natural smell is quite pleasant, but you have to have your nose close to notice it. It was remarkable, then, when she came home one Thursday with some perfume on. Thinking she was perhaps advertising her availability for loving, I gave her a hug, followed by a nuzzle and kiss in expectation. But no, apparently tonight was not the night. She went upstairs to shower before supper, which was another unusual event. It may have been the rejection of amorous intent that got me to thinking it had been a while since we made love, perhaps a couple of weeks, and God knows when the last time was that she initiated lovemaking. I had brought this issue up before about me always asking for loving and never her. I had even suggested marriage counseling. She claimed that she loved me very much, but at this time in her life, she had a weak libido, and that was that. So did the perfume come from a sample at a department store? I looked in her purse but found nothing there. At supper, nothing was out of place, the conversation was normal, and there was casual affection. I was suspicious and, yes, I felt stupid going through the hamper looking for stains on her underwear. I didn't really expect any and saw none. Over the next week, I checked our phone records and computer, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. On subsequent Wednesdays, I smelled the same perfume on her but never found the bottle. I didn't ask wifey, as I figured I would get a bogus answer, and yet I couldn't find anything obvious. One evening, she did mention a job at the History Museum she was going to apply for. I mentioned I know Greg Baker, the business manager over there, quite well. What's the job? Do you want to meet him? The response was cold water. No, David, I don't want your friends to try to get me a job. I want to do it on my own. Well, be assured that they won't give you a job no matter who recommends you. I can get you the interview with the right person. It's up to you from there, but please yourself. What the hell, I thought. Go for it, girl. Still, I thought nothing untoward about her changing jobs. So what can you do? Look for changes in behavior and hope they mean nothing. My weight got down to 190 during all of this, and my leg muscles had bulked up a bit. Frankly, I looked good and felt good. I slept well. My pecker stood at attention every morning when I woke up. Even wifey noticed and complimented me on my appearance, not that it resulted in anything like a surge in our lovemaking. But I began to notice other women now went a bit out of their way to chat with me. I must admit this latter bit generally occurred when I was walking the dog. Dogs do make people more accessible to chat, but the chats were increasingly broken off by me or the dog as he is not interested in long talks when he wants to be walking. The dog walks soon got boring, starting as they did from the house every day. So first as a treat and later as a habit, the dog and I began taking a taxi to other areas around about 4 miles from our house. We'd get dropped off out there and then walk home. One Tuesday, as is my custom, I was up before Laura, made coffee for myself and tea for her. I was reading the paper when she came down for breakfast, fruit plate on the table, English muffins by the toaster. Why don't you look nice? What's with the shoes? You need to wipe the dust off of them. You've been wearing sandals for the last month or more. Well, I thought they would look nice with this dress. Isn't that a summer sundress? I would have thought sandals more in keeping with the season. David, no one asks you for fashion advice, do they? There's a reason for that. I have a full day in the office, but I'll be home at the usual time. What's on your schedule today? I have to see Henry in construction. They got the contract to restore the Royal Theatre, and there's so much decorative work that if I get the job, I'm gonna have to hire more help. Looking it over could take all day. Other than that, it'll be here when you get home. The site is a bit of a walk from our place, so the dog and I took a cab. The theater is a huge auditorium built in 1925. It's suitable for movies or live acts with 1,800 seats and was saved by a local college last year from the wrecking ball. It was one of the driving forces in the rehabbing of what could be a lovely neighborhood. However, it was a pain in my butt. Henry didn't have a copy of the specification and wasn't sure what I should include in my bid other than the plaster work. I explained that, of course, he could pay us to put up scaffolding, do the plaster work, and then take it down. Then he could pay the painters and gilders to put the scaffolding back up and take it down again. But where was the savings in that? Plus, we would know what plaster needed weeks to dry and what could be done right away. Letting me do it all would save at least a couple of months in completing the job. I think I sold him on expanding my scope. Henry normally does new work, but times are tough. He took this job and was a bit out of his element. I spent a lot of time taking pictures and crawling all over the place, getting some idea of the extent of the damage. The dog did easy time and snoozed peacefully for about 3 hours. I was about done by 11:30 and glad I was to be out in the air again. Buddy and I set out in the general direction of home, but I was hungry and wanted to check out a block of restaurants I had read about in the Sunday paper. By 12:30, we had walked about 2 miles and were traversing the restaurants, each with sidewalk eating out front. Both the dog and I were interested in the smells of food. I was surveying the lot to figure out what appealed to me. At the next last restaurant, I spotted my wife at an outside table close to the building. She was clearly holding hands with a well-dressed older man. She probably would have noticed me if she wasn't so focused with happy intent on what her dinner companion was saying. Of course, she didn't expect me to be there, and the dog was hidden by the other tables and a row of little potted bushes and such, so he hadn't given us away. If there had been any doubt as to it being her, the dog picked his nose up and gave a gentle woof, recognizing her scent. I put him in the heel position lest he lunged into the restaurant and walked past them. My mind was racing with thoughts ranging from denial to homicidal rage. I continued around the block while my head cleared until I came to the point where they were in view again. I was sure I didn't recognize the guy. He was clearly older than her by 20 years and had the look of money about him. By now, the table had been cleared and coffee served. I had stalled as long as I could. I had to make a decision: attack, flee, or hide and follow them. What really decided it was that wifey's back was to me, so I could approach unrecognized. I put the dog in the heel position and walked up to them, keeping my eyes on the folks at the table next to them so Studley wouldn't connect my approach with them. As I closed in, I saw wifey had her shoe off and was rubbing his leg with her foot, which sported red nail polish. As I came abreast of the table, I picked up an empty chair and sat down at their table, clearly startling the two of them. "Laura, I was just walking by and saw you here. Who's the new man?" She visibly jumped and yanked her hand out of his with a look of panic in her eyes while the dog was pestering her with his exuberant doggy greeting. I nudged her shoe out of reach and stuck out my hand to Studley. "Hi, I'm Henry Whitaker. The habits of courtesy carry us through all embarrassment. Andrew Morgan." And with no prompting, I help out at the party office with Laura. "Andrew, this is my husband Henry and our dog Buddy. What are you doing here?" "Gee, I asked you first. What are you two doing here? You tell me." Her foot with scarlet red painted toenails was scrambling around under the table trying to find her shoe. "Oh, just having lunch. And your plans for afterward?" "We're going back to work, of course." "Oh, of course. Well, good, that relieves my mind. When I saw you holding hands and you playing footsie under the table with your red toes, I thought that this might be a local Democratic sequel to Bill and Monica. You're not a cigar smoker, are you, Andrew?" I heard a guffaw from the table behind me, but Studley smirked and shook his head. "Afraid not. Planning to put something else in then, I suppose? Well, you folks get along with your afternoon. It's a long cab ride back to your office from here, Laura. I assume you'll be home at the regular time. You'll have supper ready and a dessert, so please don't bother bringing home a cream pie." I don't think she knew what a cream pie is because she looked befuddled. The guys behind me did another chuckle, and a slightly embarrassed grin came from Studley. "Henry, I resent your insinuations. This is nothing more than a lunch." I stood up, returned the chair to the table where I found it, and glanced directly at the two guys behind me who had been hanging on every word. So I asked them, well, jury of two, since you are unknown to the principals here gathered, I ask you, can this woman be believed? Hell no, buddy. They were talking about how to communicate with each other when they're away from the office without you finding out. Andrew, as she calls him, arrived with 2 throwaway cell phones and gave her one in her purse. They were planning to go to his house this afternoon. Sorry, dear. The jury has voted for conviction. The judge will now retire and consider the sentence. By the way, keep the phone, Laura. You may need it soon. Come, buddy, let's go. To the guys, she named the dog. They laughed. Figures. When I resumed my walk, I felt bad awful. Actually, but I thought I had made the right decision. I felt bad because I really loved Laura, but I rather thought she was now out of my life. In fact, I had lost my appetite for both her and for lunch. You can only lose someone's trust once. After that, you may say, of course I trust you, but it's not like before. I wondered who exactly Andrew was to her. The obvious options were sex buddies, a male shoulder to cry on during the divorce she was planning, or the long-awaited love of her life and her new husband. I called my younger sister, who was also self-employed and a fact-checker for assorted media. In essence, if a news source claims so-and-so divorced in 1978, my sister checks the fact. She's very good at digging information out of the internet. Hey sis, you online at the moment? Yes, why? You and Buddy get lost again? Nope, big secret though, it's completely legal but very confidential. You can't tell anyone in the family about what I need you to do. You're kidding. Nope. Go online and look up Andrew Morgan. He's about 58 years old and lives in Philly. I want to know all the dirt about him, credit rating, marriage, money, etc. If you have to pay to get into databases, it'll pay you back. Call me on my cell phone when you get some good stuff. The deadline is 5 p.m. I can do it, Henry, but why the secrecy? What's happening? I think Laura may be getting interested in him. I need your help now. You got it. Off the top of my head, I recall Morgan is from old money but has none himself, bit of a rotter. Married to Jennifer Waldrop Morgan, who has loads of bucks and is a society maven. Andrew is a man about town who does nothing but is accepted socially because of his wife of many years. Don't loan him money and regard anything he says with suspicion. That's the nutshell biography. You'll get some specifics by 5 p.m. I especially wanted to know how much money he has. How the hell do you know all that off the top of your head? Well, like I say, he gets around and is in the papers quite a bit. That, and I did the fact checks on a book about his father a few years ago. I'm drawing a blank on the author's name, but it felt like I wrote half of the book. Great. Look forward to hearing from you later. And thank you. Well, knowing the enemy is the key to winning the battle. As I was walking by anyway, I rummaged in the 2 or 3 trash cans nearest to our house but didn't find what I now suspected I might find sooner or later. Obviously, the next step was Laura. She could have skipped work and beat me home or kept me waiting while she had sex with Andrew, trying to come up with a good story. I guess the former if Andrew was a passing fancy and the latter if our marriage was over. Happily, it was the former. She was home, and perhaps Andrew was a passing fancy. She greeted me earnestly. Henry, I'm sorry. It wasn't what you think. Andrew is going through a divorce and needed someone to talk with. That was all. And what? Look, I want you to tell me in detail with dates and places what's been going on, especially on Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm telling you, Henry, nothing's been going on. I love you. So this was the first time you dressed especially for him and hid the nail polish from me? You know that was wrong. The 2 of you hid across town, found to have an intimate lunch followed by an afternoon of sex in the house of the guy you wanted to help, where you could offer consolation for his marital worries in private. Make dear Andrew feel less unloved out of kindness, but overcoming great personal disgust. Hold his hand and give him a hard-on as you reassured his masculine vanity? You make it sound so shabby. It wasn't like that. So tell me how it was then, Laura. Surely it's not true that nothing happened between you. But nothing did happen. My cell phone rang. As I reached for my cell phone, Laura said, "Leave it, Henry. They'll call back." Grabbing the phone, I responded, this conversation isn't going anywhere anyway. You're still in damage control mode. Hello? No, I'm not okay. What was the outcome of that? It would seem so. Okay, let me know. Bye. It was my sister announcing that Andrew and his wife just celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. And there was an allegation against Andrew of rape and related pictures of at least 2 naked women posted on the internet. He allegedly got them into his study, screwed them, and went nuts in front of hidden cameras. He was okay up to that point, but then they showed up on an internet porn site he is suspected to have a part ownership in. It was hushed up, partly because it was all he said, she said, and there was no proof who posted the pictures. One of the women did get a good chunk of money out of Andrew, or his Wafeno one knows. He owns no property, no business partnerships, and his net worth is about $250,000 and falling. Mine is about $350,000 and rising. Andrew is a nice guy, and his wife doesn't understand him, right? Listen, Laura, I would love to hear the fairy tale you've concocted, but I've not the patience. I'm going out for a while to lower my blood pressure. I walked back to the door. They'll be back in an hour or two, and then we'll decide what to do. She followed me to the door, repeating her claim of innocence, and I got the door shut in her face. I continued walking in the direction Buddy and I had been taking to get to our house, checking the trash cans as I went. In the bin on the corner I hit pay dirt. Under some papers and such, I found a folded newspaper containing a discarded cell phone and a 3-pack of unopened condoms. I had a nice coffee in a local cafe and even indulged in a real cream puff. I read the paper there to soak up the hour. I figured wifey needed to come to her senses or to cook up a better story. I strolled back to the house, took a pee in the hall toilet, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat down with my readied wife. So where were we? I believe you had floated the fiction that nothing happened. You were loyal and true, helping the lovelorn, which is a group you may soon be joining if you don't tell me exactly what's been going on. But I told you nothing happened. Nothing's been going on. Look, you silly cow, vague denials are not convincing. Stuff has been going on for a month or more. So tell me what's happening. I really don't know if you have anything to gain by doing so, but I assure you, you have nothing to lose. As things stand, you're on your way out the door. I know more than you give me credit for, and your story better align with what I do know. All right, I swear nothing happened. I began working with Andrew back in May, and I was drawn to him. He has a certain magnetism. At the time, our marriage was going stale, boring sex, same old story, and I was feeling old. Andrew is well off from old money and is connected to everybody who is anybody in this city. He has his problems too, and he began confiding in me. We started going out to lunch on Wednesdays so that we could talk. Certainly, he didn't want his personal troubles to be office gossip. I think I did him some good. He was really broken. Office wife was sleeping around with unsuitable people. Oh, indeed. It's much better when they sleep around with suitable people, preferably their betters. Much less painful for the wrong spouse. That's not what I mean. Possibly, but it's what it sounded like. So, old father figure Andrew began to woo you with that "my wife doesn't understand me" line. Where did he take you to dinner and what did he give you for gifts? He never gave me anything of consequence. So what little token things did he give you? Some perfume. Took me to a department store the second or third week to help him find a gift for his wife and wanted my advice. We went into the perfume department. He wanted something she might think was sexy to inspire her and wanted my advice on what scents might do that. I tried half a dozen and finally picked one, but I only said I thought it was very nice for his wife, of course. The next time I saw him, he gave me a bottle of it. It was quite innocent, right? He suggested perfume for someone you never met. You picked it out one you thought was erotic. He bought it for you and asked you to wear it to connect your body to his face. It was all so innocent that you never mentioned him, your shopping expedition, or the perfume to me. I take that back. You mentioned seeing him greeting your boss with a hug, kiss, and hand-grabbing the butt cheek. You said she laughed and kissed him as though they were once lovers. Your words, not mine. So where is this perfume that your other man gave you, the one that makes you feel like having sex? I would like to see it, try it out, actually. I left it at work. So you wore it just for him whenever he took you out because he bought it just for you, and he thought it got you wet. Knowing why you were putting it on must have been exciting. Mustn't bring it home, though, lest hubby find it. Our little secret. I get the picture. Where did he tell you to apply the perfume? I know it must look that way, but I wasn't thinking. I was being kind. I didn't want to hurt him by rejecting him, and he's an older gentleman, so he's not so politically correct as people our age. Again, where did he tell you to apply the stuff? As you know, I don't wear perfume, but I do know where to put it. He told me the usual place: on the wrists, the neck, between the breasts. I checked online. He told me correctly. Yes, certainly between your breasts, where he was planning to have his nose at some point. By the way, how much did this bottle cost? Why, I don't. I slammed my hand flat on the table with a smack, and she jumped. Cut the crap. Of course you know. He bought it right in front of you and had to have mentioned it to you. He wanted to impress you, so how much? Laura's lip quivered. It was outrageous, $3.20 for a small bottle. Now we're starting to see the bigger picture in context. Laura, what you've been doing is called letting the small head do the thinking. In your case, your vertical lips were whispering to you. But do continue. This was still in July, wasn't it? When did he get on to you about your clothing? My God. How? Just go on. Also, you need to tell me when and where you went with him. Well, the first 2 times it was just to a little Italian restaurant in North Baltimore. After that, mostly in the neighborhood where you saw us. It was the end of July. He said it was where it was happening. He and a number of others had been buying properties there, and the area was taking off. I met him at the Blue Squash. It's a Mexican fusion place. He gave me the perfume at lunch. I dabbed some on, and later the waitress asked what the scent was that I was wearing that had her a bit aroused. Did he get there first? She nodded. Yes. So he primed a waitress to say that when she, picked up the plates? She was clearing the table? No, he wouldn't have done that. I mean, how could he? Maybe he did. I mean, now that you mention it, I really can't imagine a waitress coming out with something like that right out of the blue. He did tell me a lot of crap about how I stirred him and such. And about your choice of clothing? Geez, that was nothing. Shortly after I first met him in the office, I think we had lunch right around the corner from work. Part of his patter of flattery and good advice, I had such nice legs and all, but I would benefit from a more professional look. I should wear dresses and skirts, but bare-legged with sandals and button-down blouses with a bit of jewelry. Anyway, the lunches were nothing much. We sort of commiserated with one another about life. Be specific. What did he lead you into bitching about? Well, where my career was going. I mean, Andrew is a talent spotter in the city. He got my boss her job, and he's helped lots of other people get ahead. He connects talented people in one organization with an opportunity in other organizations. He was telling me about a job with the History Museum that would be perfect for me. It was gossip, of course, but real inside stuff. They don't advertise the good jobs on Monster, And as he had confided in me about his marital troubles, I mentioned what you had said about our marriage and whatnot. What not? Well, us having a chilly sex life right now and difficulties talking about important stuff, not seeing eye to eye, that sort of thing. Excellent conversation. He told you, in effect, stick with me, babe, and it'll get you a better job with more money, and you responded by telling him that you hadn't had good sex in ages. I bet his ears perked up when he heard that. Her eyes watered up a bit. Henry, you turn everything into something sordid. It wasn't like that at all. He was thoughtful and kind. He is a master, Laura. Everything he said had 2 sides. On one side, he was kind and protective, but on the other hand, it was demanding and controlling. We are both seeing the truth like a coin having 2 sides. Anyway, go on. The first lunch date across town, the Blue Squash, was so-so. Well, after lunch, we took a cab back across town. When we were a couple of blocks from the office, the driver damn near took a corner on 2 wheels, and I flew across the seat and landed in a jumble on Andrew. I was embarrassed to fall all over him like that, Andrew had the driver stop the cab right there, and we got out and walked around the block to the office. I can read her like a book. You skipped something just now, didn't you? When you were thrown on top of Andrew. It's not important, but, well, he did kiss me. But look, it wasn't premeditated or anything, just, being tossed into him, almost a reflex, a thing of the moment. That's all. I stood up. Well, I'll see you after supper. I'm going out to eat by myself. There's no point in continuing this conversation if you keep trying to hide what you were doing. If you're still here when I get back, we can try for the last time for complete honesty. What do you mean, Henry? I called the dog and put his collar on. Good day for the dog, all that walking. Bad day for me. They'll tell you what happened, you silly cow. Yes, you slid on top of him. You ever have a cab swerve like that for no reason? I never have. As he got in, he slipped the cabbie 20 and a note telling him to take a hard left turn towards the end of the ride. It was planned. You skidded across the seat onto him. He kissed you quite firmly and deliberately, and after a shocked pause, you kissed back with tongue work. The next thing you knew, he had his hands on your other places, right? She was horrified. I mean, how? My educated guess was right on the mark. My God, Henry, why am I talking to you like you were there? I'm genuinely weirded out over this. Come on, buddy, let's take a walk. This house is more than full enough of half-truths and outright lies with Laura here. Buddy had a nice walk, and I stopped at a small diner where the floor was clean enough for the dog to lay down. Not that he cared. They had a delicious lamb shank with fresh fava beans on special. When I got back, I poured another small glass of wine for myself and one for Laura while giving the dog the shank bone. I sprawled out in the chair opposite her. So where were we? Oh yes, you were trying to hold back the knowledge of your first wet tongue kiss with Andrew and his first grope of your whatnot, plus how sexually excited you were. Now, I mentioned before that you were to tell me everything, and you're not doing that. I'm serious. I want the bald truth, or you can get your bum out the door right now. You can spend the next few weeks at Andrew's house. Jennifer is in France for the next few weeks, or you can live there as a maid with benefits for all I care. Am I clear on that? Yes, Henry, very clear. How do you know about Jennifer Morgan? I don't know how you know all this, but that's what happened. We were both shocked at our instinctive reactions and stumbled over each other with apologies. We were practically at the office, and like I said, Andrew had the cabbie pull over so we could regain our composure before we went into the building. There was a long pause, I suppose, where she was deciding if there was anything she dared not tell me. The week before last, we went to a really great West Indian French restaurant, really just a hole-in-the-wall place. So now you are at the point where you are voluntarily marking yourself with a scent and wearing clothes he approves of that give him easy access to your holes. Is this the week with the undergarments? Or did that come earlier and you forgot to mention it? She burst out crying and ran out of the room, sobbing as she went. I sipped some wine and started to read the paper. She came out of the bathroom about 10 minutes later, readied with a snivel or two. I am so sorry. You knew everything all along. Why didn't you say something and stop me? You never let on. Go on. The West Indian jerk chicken, neon lights, cheap tables and chairs, really spicy, great-tasting food. Yes, well, I don't know what brought it up, but Andrew had been talking earlier about women willingly wearing uncomfortable underwear like girdles in the old days and nowadays bras and thongs and such. What cheap, uncomfortable things they were, that most women didn't know what really good underwear was. Well, and I thought it would be the old line, take off your underpants in the restaurant line. Andrew is an original, all right, something new under the sun. He reached into his briefcase and handed me a very elegant box, saying, "Here, this is for you. Try them out and let me know which is more comfortable, these or what you have on now." Of course, I started to open it. "Don't open it here. This is too shabby a place for these," as he tapped his finger on the box. Since I'm trying to be honest, we necked like teenagers in the cab back to the office. I knew I had a glum look on my face. "Laura, this is really hard for me to kiss and tell. It's not so easy to hear it either. But we need the catharsis to heal. Go on. By the way, tell me about the panties. What was so special, and the price?" Honest, he's never been here. Honest. He dropped me off at the office in the underpants. I've never seen anything like them. They don't look the least bit erotic, nothing like that at first glance. Plain even, but pure, tightly woven silk, carefully hand-stitched. You forgot to check the inside. The price was still on them. $75 each, and there were 3 pairs in the box, 1 red, 1 black, and 1 white. They were sort of like very short-legged boxer shorts, beautifully made, and in the crotch there was a silk pocket, and you could slide a cotton handkerchief-like thing into the pocket if you needed them to be more absorbent. I tried a pair on at the office, and they were heavenly, like I was naked underneath, only rubbing like silk against me. Of course, they were silk. I couldn't stand it. I was so hot I came home and attacked you that night. I don't remember seeing them. Be serious. I couldn't let you see them. I changed in the office and kept them in the office. The price wasn't left in the box by accident, you fool. He wanted to impress you. People with money to bun, it's important for the seduction that you be impressed. Go on to the next part. So 2 weeks ago, we went to lunch at a French restaurant over on 3rd and Elm. I know you're going to ask, yes, I chose the white ones. I doubt that you chose them. You sure Andrew didn't express a preference for the white ones? Well, maybe now that you mention it, he did. Anyway, it didn't matter, right? I thought he played her like the master. He was always asking for more, always something that would be easy to say yes to get her in the habit of agreeing, expecting to do things to please him. This is when he asked you to show him that you were wearing his gift there in the restaurant. She went orbital. Jesus H. David Henry, did you put a hidden mic in my purse? I made sure nobody saw that, and he never mentioned or emailed or spoke about it. Answer me. God damn it, how did you know? There's no microphone. Go look in your various purses. See if there's a bug. Seeing is believing. As we mentioned earlier, I have a very active male mind, and I am very good at deductive logic. That's all. You barely understood what he said to you. I understand what he was doing. All right, whatever. We were sitting side by side in the booth, me on the inside. He asked to see his gift. So I looked around and lifted my dress only high enough for him to see my underpants. See, you interpreted the word his gift to be the underpants he gave you. Equally, his words referred to your glory hole, which was going to be his gift from you. Two sides to everything. Your conscious mind understood one side, but subconsciously you weren't innocent. You understood where things were going. I don't think so. Oh crap. Maybe you're right. Anyway, we had a lovely prix lunch. The waiter spoke French, as does Andrew, by the way, and he ordered for me. It was one of the best meals I've ever had. Mostly, we talked about the city council and what was really going to happen this fall and the likelihood that you would be working for the History Museum by then. We did talk about that. It looks like a sure thing, even though you haven't been interviewed for the job. And you had sex in the booth after all that peeking under skirt, eating sophisticated food, and talking. I am ashamed of myself, but it wasn't sex, more like heavy petting. Sicko. No, not at all. Very erotic. Sex in public but hidden. A shared secret adventure. Further practice for you to submit to him. I bet he was ready again by the time you got in the cab. I had to, as you apparently already know. By the way, when was he going to put in a good word for you at the History Museum, and did he mention who his contact was? She visibly relaxed at what she saw as an innocuous question. Actually, he did just after we ordered. Next week, Wednesday, he was having lunch with Greg Hoover. He's the person to see, so you would have to be nice to him today. And as a correction, you were hoovering Andrew. The guy at the museum is Philip Baker. It irritates him to no end to be called Greg. And Philip would never go to lunch with an idiot like Andrew. I have lunch with Philip and Howard Goldman in a local pub 3 or 4 times a year. I offered to introduce you if you recall, but you wouldn't have it. Well, we all value stuff we pay for more than what we can have for free. By the way, you didn't mention his gift of the nail polish. When did he give it to you? It arrived at the office 2 weeks ago. And the note that came with it, David, how could you know about the note? Laura, the note. Well, he knew I didn't wear nail polish, but he asked as a favor for me to wear it today. I just painted it on last night. Just on your toes so you could wear shoes and hide it from me. A sheepish nod from wifey. Well, good. Another visible sign of your willingness to wear his mark and surrender to him completely. What did he tell you you were going to do this afternoon? Well, just that he had some antiques that had been in his family for 250 years and in a beautifully restored house. The museum borrowed several of the better pieces of furniture for the Rococo Chippendale special exhibit a few years ago. They have offered him over $1 million for the desk alone. Well, of course, I was interested. I mean, how often do you get a chance to see something like that? And what did you think you would have to do to please Andrew and get the good word in with Baker? Well, that's just it. I was calling a halt to it all. Him forcing me to please him was just the end. I mean, I'm married after all. Nothing more was going to happen. I swear I was done with him just as soon as lunch was over. So sweet, innocent you left the house this morning planning to end the affair before it exceeded Bill Clinton's definition of sex. Yet you told the office you would be gone for the rest of the day. To prepare to give Andrew the bad news that it was all over between the two of you, you went to work prepared exactly as Andrew asked you to, with shining scarlet red nails on your toes, with matching red silk underpants, with his perfume on your breasts. Face it, you were planning to spend the afternoon alone with him in his house. You had already exchanged French kisses, let him play with your body, you bought some condoms to use at his house, and now you think me dumb enough to believe you weren't planning to screw him. I didn't have any condoms. Oh yes, you did. That's why you about crapped yourself when the guy said he gave you a cell phone and it was in your purse. If I had looked in your purse, I would have seen this. I pulled the discarded cell phone out of my pocket. And these, I reached back into my pocket and tossed an unopened 3-pack of condoms, lubricated and ribbed. Just like a good little whore. Be prepared. Henry, how? Where? From the trash can on the corner of 5th and Pine where you dumped them when you got out of the cab. That's where they're from. They were tucked together inside a folded newspaper. Look, you dumb whore. The son of a bitch was setting you up, and you eagerly allowed the old fart to seduce you. Oh yes, you probably see the house, but in his study, in front of hidden video cameras, you would have had a pork infusion from that rotter, the least of the blue bloods. Then if you tried to break off with him, he would have had pictures that would ruin you and your marriage. In a month or 2, when he had screwed you, he could do any damn thing he wanted with you. Oh, I can't believe that. He was really nice. Laura, he's played you like a violin from the start. He got your sympathy, flattered you, promised you entry to what you wanted. You have your nose pressed firmly against the windows of the houses of the upper class, and he knows it. He worked diligently, getting you to yield more and more control to him. The worst thing is you decided that you wanted what you thought he could deliver and were willing to have sex with him and dump me to get it. You knew very early on where this was going, didn't you? No, I really didn't. It was so gradual, each thing was a little more than before, but nothing. I was a drag on your ambitions, holding you back from the right people. Those people run things. You think we are trash. Let him cover you with his underpants. Wear them for him. Feel how the other half lives. Kisses, forced but impulsive, accidental, next time given as a right. The outrage of almost having a public fornication in a restaurant. For God's sake. Each previous liberty now is due. Sucking him off the first of the 3 holes you were going to give him. Well, he didn't get you to his house to have sex with you today. But that's not his fault. Is it? You were willing and eager until you panicked when you saw me. No, it wasn't like that. It was like I was under a spell. I love you, Henry. You think so, but you want to have sex with Andrew. You think living with me will prevent you from reaching your goals. I'm too rough, too working class. I'm your starter husband. You want to be in society. That was Andrew's hook. You swallowed it, hiding it from me because you knew if I found out, it would end our marriage, and it wasn't convenient for you to make the break. Not just yet. But I don't love Andrew. I love you. You were dumb enough to think that Andrew would divorce his wife and enjoy having you as his trophy wife. You would inherit a pot of money when he kicked off. You never checked. Andrew has less than we have. He owns no property, none. He has a spendthrift trust. The 250-year-old furniture is crap. It's his wife's. His wife of 30 years had all the money and prestige. He's the joke of Baltimore society, tolerated only because his wife gives out tons of money. The guy is a master, willing to screw anything that comes his way. The only guy in town with a part ownership in a spicy website that lost money. Well, guess what? Remember what I said about the wealthy screwing the wrong sort of people? You're not society, so his wife really doesn't care if he screws you. You are an unsuitable person. They both know he's not going to marry you. You're just the right sort for him to screw, like his wife screwing her personal trainer. Fun for her, no consequences. He'll quit when she wants him to. You picked the wrong one this time, but take heart. Learn from this and you may hit gold next time. I have to tell you that, like an idiot, I did forgive her indiscretion, but I certainly didn't forget it. Bill Baker interviewed her, and she did get the job at the History Museum. After DeVitmas, we talked about starting a family, but before it could happen, Bill mentioned to me as a friend who had told him the truth of what happened between Laura and Andrew, that Laura was perhaps enjoying a dalliance with a board member, Henry Fields. He swore me not to give him as the source of the rumor. Fields is distantly related to old money, but he grew up rough. His money actually comes from demolition and salvage yards. Henry was recently divorced and genuinely wealthy. I didn't fool around this time. I paid an investigator to look into it and got a batch of pictures, them kissing, him with his knee pressed between her legs, and with his hand on her bum, them walking with their arms around each other. I mentioned the lack of explicit pictures. Henry, unless they're truly nuts, screwing in public view or something like that, you're talking about huge costs, $20,000 to $50,000. First, you have to figure where and when they are going to do it, then you have to get the cameras in place and then get the pictures out and then get the cameras back. You can't believe what it costs paying someone reliable to break into houses, install cameras and such. Probably be cheaper to hire someone to tail them. Give me a break. Look at them kissing with his hands on her bum there, screwing each other. So I handed her divorce papers. The pictures were invaluable. She thought she was close to reeling him in, and the scandal would end her hopes. In exchange for her walking out with nothing but the clothing in her closet, I agreed to a quiet divorce and to never say a bad word about her, Andrew, or Fields. What little regret we both had was for the departure of the dreams we once shared. I also agreed she could live with me for a maximum of 6 months so the divorce would not upset her apple cart. Fields proposed and she was gone in 3 months. You might ask why I didn't kick her out the door and piss on her head when she was lying in the street. The answer is that I try very hard not to hang on to anger. Corrodes the soul and can dominate your life. When it was clear that we had no life together, I was happy to get her out of my life and move on. It would do me no conceivable good to carry on a vendetta. Frankly, nobody in town cared one way or the other, but why introduce needless discord into your life? There are things I will fight for, but a wayward wife is not one of them. Plus, giving her half of our assets would have cost me about $180,000. After the divorce, I focused on my work and my dog, Buddy. My business thrived as the economy picked up, and I found myself increasingly engaged with restoring historic buildings. I even finished my book on restoring decorative plaster work with Samuel. It was well received in the niche community of restoration experts, and I started getting more prestigious contracts. Life went on. I started attending more social events, not because I wanted to, but because it was good for business. I met new people, made new friends, and slowly the wounds from my marriage healed. I even started dating again, though I was more cautious this time around. One day, about a year after the divorce, I ran into an old college friend, Sarah. We got to talking, and it turned out she had also gone through a rough patch in her personal life. We started seeing each other more often, and over time, our friendship blossomed into something more. Sarah was different from Laura in many ways. She was grounded, honest, and genuinely kind. As Sarah and I grew closer, I realized that I had found someone who truly understood me and appreciated me for who I was. We shared common interests, and she even had an appreciation for my work in restoration. We took things slow, but eventually we moved in together. Life with Sarah was simple and fulfilling. We enjoyed each other's company, took long walks with Buddy, and explored new places together. She became my partner in every sense of the word, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly happy and at peace. Reflecting on my past, I realized that the experiences I had gone through had shaped me into the person I was. They taught me valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the importance of surrounding myself with genuine people. My journey had been tough, but it led me to a better place where I could finally start anew and build a future filled with hope and love. Thanks for watching. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories.